Howdy folks, today I want to talk about sherry, but specifically about Fino sherry, and even more specifically about this Fino sherry, Cesar Florido Cruz de la Mar Fino. It's delicious. I'm going to make some cocktails with it, tell you all about it. Let's go. So I've always had sort of a strange relationship with very dry sherries, particularly Fino sherries, because they have this sort of very intense dryness, a very intense sharpness that sort of cuts through a lot of cocktails and, for me, overwhelms the rest of the cocktail. So usually if I see a dry sherry in a drink on a cocktail menu, I'll tend to avoid it because, to me, it usually means the drink's too dry and that sherry's gonna take over and I'm not into it. That is, until I tried this sherry. Now, the Fino sherries I've had before were always from big producers, like Lustau or Gonzalez Baez. These are very large producers, so their sherries are easy to get. They're everywhere. They're sort of the ones that you'll see most often in bars. So what I realize now is that it's not that I didn't like Fino sherries, it's that I didn't like those Fino sherries. And I'm here to tell you that if you don't like Fino sherry, maybe try again with a smaller producer, someone that's really concentrating on making higher quality sherries. And the thing about it is they actually don't cost any more than the big guys. Now, I'm going to talk broadly about sherry and about the Cesar Florido in particular, but I'm not really a sherry expert. I'm not going to cover everything about sherry in this video. Maybe we can do a video about that later. Fino sherry and all sherry comes from Spain, a particular region of Spain. Sherry in general is a fortified wine that can only be made from a certain few different grapes, aged in a particular way, from this particular region of Spain. Fino can only be made from Palomino grapes, and Cesar Florido's family has a vineyard and they grow all of the Palomino grapes that he uses in his sherry. Cesar Florido Solera is sort of on the southern coast of Spain, but still on the Atlantic side, sort of near Gibraltar, if you can picture that. Very close to the coast. Now, all sherry is aged in a Solera system, and Finos in particular are aged under what's called flor, which is called the biological method of aging. Flor, which I think is Spanish for flour, is like a thin layer of yeast, a couple centimeters thick, that develops on the top of the wine as it ages in the barrel. The flor creates sort of a barrier between the air and the wine, and it keeps it from oxidizing. The flor also consumes glycol in the wine, which makes the wine drink even drier than it already is. This is in contrast to, say, an Oloroso or a PX sherry that are fortified to a higher percentage of alcohol so the yeast can't form, and that is called an oxidized aging. Now, there is a lot more to sherry than that. As I said, I'm not an expert. I'm going to put a link down below to a pretty good website with lots of good information if you're more curious. Anyway, this Cesar Florido is making some really good sherry that is sort of opening my eyes to how good sherry can be. So I'm telling you about it. I'm going to put another link below to the distributor of these sherries called Des Maisons Selections. They came to work and did a whole presentation. We tasted a bunch of sherry and it was pretty cool. So go visit that link, see if you can find this sherry anywhere. Anyway, let's try it real fast, and then I'm gonna get to some cocktails we're gonna try. Finos are very pale. This one's got sort of a very light sort of peach tinge to it. It's got a very sort of winey, almost slightly sour smell to it. A little bit citrusy. So dry. It's just so very, very dry. But the thing about it is it doesn't have that very sharp sort of acidity to it that sort of turns me off with these other Finos that I've had. It's got like a slightly citrusy aftertaste and a little bit of like a saltiness to it almost. That makes the finish so much nicer. The finish is so much less intense and sort of overpowering. I really like it a lot. Really, really delicate, sort of a little bit flowery. I love it. I'm loving it. Let's make some drinks. By the way, another thing I like about this is it comes in a 375 bottle, so there's actually a chance to drink it up before it goes all sour and weird on you, which is another reason I don't usually keep sherry around in the house, because it typically goes bad before I have a chance to drink it. So to help you finish up your bottle of sherry, I've got 3 drinks featuring this sherry that we're gonna try. The first is a classic, the Bamboo. The Bamboo is equal parts dry sherry and dry vermouth. I'm gonna do mine a little bit different. I tend to prefer my drinks just a little bit sweeter, so I'm gonna use Blanc vermouth, which I prefer to dry vermouth these days. Let's mix it up. All right, cocktail 1, the Bamboo. Let's give it a try. This is like the perfect example of what I didn't like about those other sherry drinks. The sherry isn't blasting you over the head with its intense dryness. I love putting Blanc vermouth in this instead. Just a little bit sweeter, a little bit nicer. Still very light, a delicate, sort of floral drink, low ABV, which is fun. It's still like a super classy, nice, traditional, classic cocktail, but, you know, not super high proof. Easy to enjoy. I love it. It's still dry. It's just not overly dry. I feel like dry vermouth lately, it's just not hitting my palate right, and it's like it's too dry, it's too acidic, I guess, too sharp. This combo is working for me a lot better. Okay, second drink up is a pretty straightforward one. It's from the PDT cocktail book, page 270 to be precise. It's called the Woolworth. It was invented by a guy named John Darragon in 2007. It's Scotch, sherry, Benedictine, and orange bitters. Now, I am currently in bottle reduction mode, which means I've run out of my usual mixing Scotch naked malt. So I'm gonna be using Bunnahabhain 12 in this, which is a little bit fancier than you might want to use in your cocktail, but that's what bottle reduction mode is all about. We did it. Now, let me just say, this drink calls for 2 ounces of Scotch. I went a little light on the Scotch, probably more like, I don't know, 1.5, 1 3/4. Just because when I tried it last night, the Scotch was a little overpowering, so I just made that slight adjustment. Let's give it a try. This is my kind of drink. Boozy. Scotch and Benedictine, obviously delicious. That sherry dries out the sweetness of the Scotch, the sweetness of the Benedictine, gives it this flowery, sort of almost like a pepperiness to it. But Benedictine, of course, lots of those herbal notes, making it a nice, giving it a nice complexity. I love it. I mean, very boozy. You have to be in the mood for something boozy if you're gonna drink this, but you know, if you are, then you're in luck. Now, finally, drink number 3 is called the Trident. It was invented by a guy named Robert Hess at the Zigzag Cafe in Seattle in 2002. Now, I saw this many years ago on YouTube. A place called the Small Screen Network was where I used to go for all my cocktail video content. It's still around. I'm gonna leave a link to that actual Trident video from Robert Hess from, I don't know, eight or 9 years ago. Pretty fun. This drink is basically like a Negroni, except that they're switching all the ingredients for ingredients that are more obscure. At least that were very obscure in 2002. Aquavit instead of gin, Cynar instead of Campari, sherry instead of vermouth. It also calls for peach bitters, which I actually bought just for this drink, and I still have on hand. These are Fee Brothers, which are probably not as good as the Bitter Truth peach bitters that Robert Hess uses, but I'm doing my best. The Trident. Let's see what we think. It's definitely an Aquavit sort of drink. The Aquavit and the Cynar really combined in this interesting way. You don't get a ton of peach, but it's like a little bit of peach aftertaste. The flavors really sort of combine in a great way to where you can definitely taste Aquavit, but the other ingredients sort of, can't really distinguish one from the other. That's a really fun drink. It's a little sweeter than you might expect, given the ingredients. It's just got the slightest bitter aftertaste. That's great. That's a great drink. I feel like this drink is more about the Aquavit and the Cynar than the sherry. And the reason I like the sherry is it isn't so aggressive and isn't like cutting through so much. So I don't know, maybe this drink would actually be better with one of the sherries I don't like as much, but this is a delightfully interesting drink, which I highly recommend. Now, I realize that all the drinks I made today were stirred drinks served up with a lemon twist, which was not intentional, just sort of the ones that jumped out at me as being would be fun to try today. Sherry also makes a great addition to shaken drinks, to cut back on something that's a little bit too sweet. It's got a million uses. I also have a bottle of PX sherry that I'm gonna crack open in a different video. If you have any great drinks that use PX sherry, let me know. Oloroso and Amontillado are also on the table. I'll probably get bottles of those in the future. Let me know your favorite sherry drinks down in the comments. In the meantime, thanks for watching. We will see you next time.